Hello. Well, for once, it wasn't my fault. Not my fault. Not taking any responsibility today, I don't think. Excuse the lipstick. This is what happens when you borrow your 12-year-old, 13-year-old daughter's lipstick. You end up looking like a $10 hooker. But there you go. That's me. Here I am, the honest midwife, ready to answer your questions. Hope you're all well. So I don't know whether anybody was with me on Tuesday, but we had a lovely lady come on. I'm not going to say her name because it all just got a little bit heated. I had put a post up on my Instagram on @thehonestmidwife of a true knot in a cord. Now, a true knot is basically where the baby has wiggled its way around, and it often happens really early on in pregnancy when there's lots of amniotic fluid going around. And anyway, the upshot of the post is it's quite a difficult balance when you're posting stuff on the Instagram. It's on $95. When you're posting stuff on Instagram about pregnancy, it's a fine balance between not wanting to stress people out, but actually letting you know things that are really quirky and really interesting. So whenever we see a true knot in a cord, as midwives, it's always like, oh, true knot in a cord, and we like to take a picture of it and put it up. But obviously it causes a bit of worry, and so I always like to put on there that there's nothing you can do about it, that there's lots of jelly, it's called Wharton's jelly, surrounding the vessels in the cord, and that protects the baby, and that the best thing that you can do is always keep a track of your movements, because at the end of the day your baby's movements are an indicator of your well-being. And I was talking to my friend yesterday, who's also a midwife, and we were saying about this whole thing around fetal movements, baby's movements, and this advice to go and drink cold water and lie still for an hour and all that sort of thing. And it's not a piece of advice that I particularly like, and it's not one that I give. Because if you were lying on the couch and you got flu and you felt like absolute death, and you laid there and you're not going to move around and you're not going to be busy, your normal busy self and doing all these things, even so, if someone came and chucked a glass of cold water on you, you would still react, and you would still probably go, oh, what was that, and move around. But then pretty soon, once you've dried off, you're going to curl back on the sofa. So I don't like that advice, and I think if you as a mum are thinking that actually your movements aren't good, then a cold water is not, they're not moving because they need cold water thrown at them. I think there is something about, if you sort of suddenly think, oh, I'm not sure I felt baby move, I think there's something about sitting quietly for 10, 15 minutes and seeing, because sometimes we are busy, we're running around, we don't necessarily notice things. But I think this whole cold water thing is nonsense. So you might want to say you've already done it, but I just think we should be going in and getting checked out. So anyway, after my long story, the upshot of this was that the lady that came on had been into the hospital, I think it was on Monday, with reduced movements, and had all the checks and been sent home, everything was fine. But then the day after, she still felt that things weren't right. And they've been absolutely great with her on the Monday. She telephoned on the Tuesday, and whoever answered the phone said, oh, we're not seeing people. If you've been away and sat there and felt the baby move once, then it's all right, don't come in because we're not seeing people because of COVID. And it really caused a bit of a hoo-ha, quite rightly so. But to the point where the lady in question contacted me and said, look, I've taken everything down, I've taken my post down because she was getting some quite negative feedback from midwives. And I feel it's really sad, because in any profession, there's good advice and there's bad advice, and it is bad advice. And I had absolutely no reason when I spoke to this lady to doubt her. She seemed like a really lovely lady, and whatever the reason, it could be that she has misunderstood. I don't think she had, but at the end of the day, it's so good that she came and highlighted this, because it can then be brought to the fore. So I think my message again, and I did go on Monday night or Tuesday night and say, if you are worried about your baby's movements at all, don't ever feel like you are a pain in the neck. You are not a pain in the neck. And 95%, probably higher, of midwives would much rather that you phoned in 3 times in one day and came and got checked out than sat at home once and didn't and regretted it. So, you know, babies are supposed to sort of move on regular intervals, and it is quite difficult for us all, you know, that whole what's normal for you, especially in those earlier weeks of 22, 23 weeks when you're just sort of starting to get movements of what's normal. So I think it's always good to just come back and think, do I feel reassured? And if you don't feel reassured, go and try and get some reassurance. And there was a bit of a grey area when me and my friend were talking about this, in terms of, because someone else had contacted me and said, well, I'm 24 weeks, just 24 weeks. What do that? She'd gone in, they'd just listened in with the handheld Doppler, which is what we do. But then 24 weeks is too soon for us to go onto the CTG, which is what we see gives us a more in-depth view of what the baby's heart rate is doing. And we'd listened in and sent her home. But actually at 24 weeks, and I can understand us doing that at say 22 weeks, 20 weeks or earlier, because sadly, even if there is something not quite right, there's very, very little that we can do about it at that point. Once we start to get into that 24 weeks, there are things that we can do, and there are things that we should be looking for. So if you've been in and had a hand held and you're still not reassured, ask to see the doctor, ask if it's possible for them to scan you. And I'm sure I am opening myself up here to a whole barrel of crap from somewhere, but at the end of the day, you as a mum know your body and your baby better than anybody else, and it's better to push it. I'd rather be pushed and be told, I'd rather people told me off and said you're causing a shitstorm, for want of a better word, than mums sit at home, especially in these times with COVID going around and people being told you can't, and hearing all these different stories on social media. And some of them will be like Chinese whispers, but some of them might be right. The party line right across the country should be, if you are worried about your baby's movements, pick up the phone and go in and get checked. There's nothing else, no grey area. Baby's movements are important, and so get them checked and make sure you're listened to. There you go. That's my rant. I might not be here next week. Might get picked on. Should answer some questions. We see baby Buddha Sign Bear. That's our baby Buddha Sign Bear. He's just been interviewed. He's passed all the checks, and he's going to his new home very soon, where he will soon be teaching parents all about baby signs. So when they're crying, you'll be able to say, "What's up?" That's how it goes. Right, my 7-week-old baby has just been diagnosed with flat head syndrome. Do you know the best way to treat this besides trying to make her lay on the opposite side? My answer is I don't know. However, what I would say is, I mean, it could be, I don't know about your baby, what your baby's history is, whether they've spent time in the newborn unit when they're actually laying flat. And the other thing is it causing any issue? Because your baby's going to grow lots of hair, where we probably won't see it. But my first point, personally, from a personal point of view, if it was me, with my newborn baby, would always be to take them to see a cranial osteopath. I think they do amazing work and can really sort of help with things like this. So they're not, and it's not like a massive, massive change, but you'll often find at 7 weeks their skull still isn't fused. So once they start holding their head up much more, and they're not lying down all the time, you may find that changes. So try not to worry too much. I was wondering if you had any suggestions on cream stroke treatment for spots, almost acne on the face during pregnancy. I'm 12 weeks pregnant and I'm not used to breakouts, so I'm not familiar with the spot treatment, and internet isn't appearing to be very helpful. I don't know, and I make it a sort of rule not to recommend creams and medications because it's just not the right environment for me to do so. If it's really bad, you could go and see your doctor. Obviously, this is probably caused by all the hormones going around, and a lot of time people who are breastfeeding suffer quite badly because there's just all these different hormones going around. But yeah, see your GP. I know always drinking lots of water is one of the really good things, but it never seems to make a huge... Apparently, if you drink loads of water, you lose loads of weight. That's why me and Jazz are drinking these. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure, and I don't prescribe it online. So I would go and see your GP. But congratulations on being pregnant. Are sweeps recommended when aiming for a VBAC? Oh, that's a good question, Liz. That's a very good question. I don't think the VBAC element makes any difference, to be fair. I am a firm believer that a sweep will work if you were sort of favourable anyway for labour. So when I mean favourable, your cervix, which is a tube, muscle-like tube, changes its features when labour's starting. So it will get softer, it will move more further forward, it will become shorter and start to dilate and all that sort of stuff. And what we do when we do a sweep is it's an internal examination, so 2 fingers into the vagina and sort of sweep them around inside the cervix to try and sort of basically just sort of tickle things along, really. And so I think it's an entirely personal choice as to whether you want to have it or not. But again, I don't think the VBAC element makes any difference. I might be wrong. Someone else might come. I'm often wrong. I just had a scan at 13 weeks and they found something called Triscuit regurgitation on one of the heart valves. They said most of the time it rectifies itself by the scan at 20 weeks. The hospital said it's quite common finding on scans, but I'm still worried. I'm sure you are, and I think anything that sort of has those big words in, which are well above most of our sort of like understanding, mine as well, but you know, these things do often rectify, and they wouldn't say to you that there is a chance of that if that wasn't the case. And equally, it sounds to me like, just from that short paragraph, that they've tried to reassure you. You know, hospitals are very, very clear in the information that they give. We try to be extremely transparent. So if they thought that this was sort of life-threatening or a serious issue, they would be sitting down and telling you that. They won't just be saying, oh, there, go away and see how you get on. So let's just try and take a few deep breaths. Really difficult, I know, but at 20 weeks you're going to know a little bit more. So let us know. Come back and let us know. I'm 18 weeks pregnant and have not felt any kicking. Should I be concerned? I have a private scan last week and saw baby. Also found that I have an anterior placenta. However, my midwife said that I might start feeling kicking from 18 weeks. This is my second pregnancy, so just thought I'd start feeling things earlier than last time. So sometimes people do feel things earlier, sometimes they don't. Some people have an anterior placenta and it muffles the movements. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't ever feel that lack of movements is a cause for concern at this point. I'd sort of start saying, if you haven't felt the baby move by 21, 22 weeks, then maybe maybe that's the time to phone your midwife and say, look, I'm getting really anxious. Is it possible you could just have a quick listen in just to double check the heart rate? What I would urge everybody not to do is going out and starting buying handheld Dopplers, because handheld Dopplers are a really easy way to give you false reassurance. It takes quite a lot of time and effort to really learn how to understand what we're hearing. And so there is and the thing is that you are listening to one moment in time. Oh, there's somebody at my door. I'll have to go and answer that. Just as well, this came now, because if it had come when I come offline, I would have shouted, because I've waited in all day because I'm supposed to be delivered at 9 this morning. What was I talking about? Pregnancy movements. Yes, handheld Dopplers, just don't use them. You could be listening to the placenta, you could be listening to a heartbeat that you think sounds all right, that actually we may listen and think, actually, it's not so good. You may struggle to find it. Get yourself in a right roll of tears. We come in, listen, and we find it straight away. We're like, baby's absolutely fine. Don't use handheld Dopplers. Really bad idea. I have a bicornuate uterus but have little information. I'm currently 29 weeks pregnant. Any advice? My growth scans start next week. There isn't really that much else to say, Lee. It's just about how that growth goes and monitoring as time goes on and working out a recommendation. If the uterus is impeding growth, they may decide that actually it's better for your baby to be out rather than in, so maybe do an induction earlier. But really it's only for that, they can only really assess you based on what they see and what they know. So try not to worry. 29 weeks, wow, that's amazing, you've done really well. No reason to think that you wouldn't go a bit further. 36 weeks, 37 weeks, no, it varies, and it can be so different for each woman. So what I will do though, because I've not looked at this for a while, is I'll put a post up this week. Write that down. Bicornuate. I'll put a post up and then we'll see if I can get some more information. I'm currently 25 I'm currently pregnant with my second at 22 weeks. I don't feel as connected to this baby as I did with my first. Is this normal? Will I eventually feel excited about it? Do you know what? I think that's such a good question, because I think the thing is with your second baby, there's lots of other things going on. I think one, you've got another baby or child that you've got to look after, and life's pretty busy. And I think secondly, you know what's coming in a good and a bad way, but it's like you remember all the things that are just like, oh gosh, I remember that. And then suddenly the more you get onto pregnancy, I remember when I was pregnant with Isabel, who was very much wanted, as I'm sure this baby is here. And I got to about 32, 33 weeks. I was walking up to the post office and I just got to the top of the road and I suddenly was just like, oh my God, I'm having another baby. And it just really hit me like a ton of bricks. But actually what I will say, and hopefully it's some reassurance, because I really struggled when I had Jack. It was like a wrecking ball. Just suddenly it was like my life was unrecognisable. Having Isabel, it was so much more enjoyable. Your second baby is so much more enjoyable than your first. And I think it's because your life doesn't change that drastically. They just sort of slot right into the chaos. Just one more mouth to feed, but everything else stays the same. So just try and sort of reassure yourself you'll be absolutely fine. And you do. And I think that's another thing. I think you sort of look at the one you've got and think, I couldn't love another human soul as much as I love this one. And believe you me, you do. You do love them just as much. About baby, I thought you didn't need to monitor baby's movements until 26 to 28 weeks, but you just mentioned someone about being concerned at 24 weeks. Sorry, I'm a worrier and would love some further advice. So Hayley, once your baby starts to move, so say you start feeling movements at 18 weeks, and every day you have movements and you feel them, and then suddenly at 22 weeks you don't feel them, you need to get that checked out. It's not a case of once they start they sort of stop a bit, and then so it's all about, so anytime you feel that you've got to that, I mean obviously you're going to have days in those really really early days where it's like, oh, that baby moving, not sure, and then you don't feel anything else and you sort of carry on. But once you actually are having those regular movements, they should continue. So yeah, you should get checked out. I've just stopped breastfeeding my 2-year-old. He doesn't drink cow's milk unless in cereal. Is it necessary for him to drink milk from a bottle cup, or can it? Absolutely. With a balanced diet, not a problem at all. It's not a problem. Yeah, you can get it through yogurts, cheese, any sort of dairy. On the cereal, like you said, it's not an issue. I'm just wondering how long babies are in size 0 newborn nappies and when they need to size up, and also how many roughly they use per day. So generally about 8 or 9, between 8, 9, 10 nappies a day. The first part of your question is impossible to answer because it just depends on how big your baby is and how big your baby's growing. So that bit's impossible. But I would roughly aim for about 8 to 10 nappies a day. My 9-week-old little boy has green tinged poo today. Is this normal? He had vaccinations last week, so that could be a contributing factor. Keep an eye on him. Answering your question, is he well? Is he weeing? Is he pooing? If you're worried, you need to take him to the GP. But I think as long as he's weeing and pooing and waking for feeds, generally they're okay, but keep an eye. I'm currently 31 weeks with MCDA twins. Due to COVID, I haven't been able to ask many questions. I'll be having a C-section due to the risks and will be needing steroid shots. Do you know when I will usually get a date for my section? Thank you. Congratulations, paid. So for those of you who don't know, MCDA means that the baby has one chorion. That's wrong. Yeah, one chorion and 2 amnions. Is that right? MCDA? I've gone blank. DCDA. So dual. Why have I gone blank? Hang on a minute. Let's go to Google. That's not a good sign, is it, when the bloody midwife needs to go to do Google? MCDA twins. Yes. So I was right. So monochorionic dimyonic twins are the product of a single fertilized egg. So one egg resulting in genetically identical offspring, so identical twins share a single, so one placenta but 2 separate. So it's I remember it's 1 drive, 2 houses. So they've basically got a sac each but only 1 placenta. There you go. So what was the question again? To remind myself of these things. Do I know when I will usually get a date for your section? I would have thought around 35, 36 weeks. That's my gut feeling. They'll be monitoring you, I would have thought, closely, but that is when I would generally think. Sorry, the midwife that needs to Google things. I had my little girl 5 weeks ago via section, but I'm not back in hospital. But I'm back in hospital with pancreatitis due to this. Have surgery tomorrow. However, I'm breastfeeding, worried that being away from her will affect our bond and my milk supply. Any advice? So I certainly don't think it will affect your bond. And with regards to your milk supply, I think hopefully you're not going to be out of action too long. And if you're able to express in the meantime while you just get things settled a bit more, then all well and good. But at the end of the day, Bronwyn, your health is really important. And so you've just got to go with what you've got. So don't put loads of pressure on yourself. Take your breast pump in if you've got one. And once you come around from surgery, I wouldn't have thought that you're going to be in surgery for that long. Once you're around, you could do a bit of expressing. Again, I don't know whether they're allowing baby in with you, so I'm not sure. But just chill, express when you can. And baby, with 1 day off, your baby will pick things back up. But don't worry about the bonding, you'll be fine. I have Codia status, 31 weeks. I'm really worried, only having blood tests weekly and my iron has dropped severely, they've told me. Okay, so I'm hoping that they've put you on iron tablets. And blood tests once a week is probably around about the norm. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. If at all they're worried, just they will increase it. But again, it comes back to your baby's movements. If at any point you're not happy about your baby's movements, go back in and get checked. Even if you've got an appointment the day after, if you're not happy with the movements, go and get checked. 26 weeks with MCDA twins, but due to twin transfusion, they are now monoamniotic, so they are giving me a C-section at 32 weeks on 1st of December. I've said that I'll have my steroids a week before my section. Originally, I was told 34 to 6 weeks before the twin-to-twin transfusion. So that's about right. So, yeah, so this lady's 26 weeks with MCDA twins, but due to twin transfusions, that's where one baby starts feeding off the other, basically. They are giving me a C-section at 32 weeks on the 1st of December. Well, we need to hear about this. We need to hear how you all get on. So come back and tell us. So 34 to 36 weeks. So I was it just say 35 to 36? Yeah. I had an emergency section being put to sleep 13 years ago due to preeclampsia. The midwife would like me to try natural this time, but I feel very apprehensive. Can I opt for a section again? You can. If you want to go for a section, you absolutely can. The doctors will talk to you and they'll sort of ask you what your rationale is, and they may talk to you about things that have changed over the last 13 years. Things do change in obstetrics, and it may be that they're able to manage your blood pressure a bit better than they were 13 years ago. So I would have a appointment with your consultant and ask them to really talk it through with you. And it may be that you say, actually, I'm adamant I want a section, and they will go with that if that's what you want, but they will talk to you about the pros and cons at the same time. Right, there we go. I think I've answered all of your questions. Sorry about the mix-up in the beginning. Hope you have enjoyed the live as always. We're back again on Tuesday on Instagram at 4 p.m, not 4:30. What else do I need to tell you? I've still got spaces on the free antenatal class on Saturday for anybody who has still yet to do their antenatal class, so go and sign up there. Anybody who's got a dog and is pregnant and is wanting to safely introduce their dog to their baby, we have spaces on Saturdays, barkers and babies as well, so sign up to that. You're all ace, as always. Come over to @The Honest Midwife if you've got any questions and I'll try and help. I shall see you all soon. Bye.